Hey everybody, thank you guys for watching. This here is my 1989 Ford Mustang notchback. This is the car that I'm going to be doing a 5-lug conversion on. If you guys saw my previous video, I modified a set of early Sn95 spindles for the front, and I was able to fit a set of PBR calipers from a newer GT. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start the process, which is gonna take a couple of videos where I'm gonna completely do a 5-lug conversion on this car. So disc brakes on the back, disc brakes on the front. Also, since this is a 4-cylinder, I'm gonna swap the complete differential because I don't have an 8.8 right now. I have the 4-cylinder differential, and that's just not gonna do. The best place to start is really going to depend on your personal project. Since I will be replacing the entire rear differential, I feel like that's going to be the easiest thing to do in my case. But say if you had a GT or a 5.0 notchback and you already have an 8.8, then you'll have to remove the spindles and do some extra work, and that gets a little bit more complicated. But since I'll be just replacing the entire differential, I'm gonna go ahead and start there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna put this car up on the lift, and we're gonna get started right now. Of course you knew I don't have a lift. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and jack it straight up from the pumpkin. And then I'm gonna find some good place to place the jack stands that's not gonna get in the way when we finally remove the differential. So now that the car is jacked up, we need to find a good place to put the jack stands, and I personally think that the best place is right here by the control arm. Not on the control arm itself, because you're gonna remove that, but slightly forward. You see there's a piece of the frame there. Alright, so on both sides I have the jack in the same place. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and bring this down, and we should be ready to start disassembling or removing the differential. Alright, now that I'm down here under the car, basically I'm going to have to undo the bolts on the drive shaft and let that hang down. I'm gonna have to disconnect the e-brake cables from the front because those will not work anymore. I'm also going to have to disconnect this brake line here. Like I said, this is a 4-cylinder, so the source for the rear brakes, it's actually on the passenger side, not in the middle like the V8 models have it. So I'll have to deal with that. Also, I'll have to disconnect the shocks so that I can remove the springs. Also, the bolts that hold the upper control arm up here, and also the lower one up here. And then that's probably gonna allow me to roll the old differential out. So I'm gonna go ahead and get to that in a minute. So these drive shaft bolts here are extremely tight for some reason, and the way that I was able to crack one of them loose is by using the old leverage trick. So you'd stick this happened to be 12mm key on one end, and you use a bigger key, and then basically use the closed end to create leverage. Alright, so then you're able to pull with a lot more force, because I tried doing it only with this, but it was impossible. When you're removing the drive shaft bolts, make sure that's one of the first things you do, because you want to take advantage of the fact that you still have the e-brake and the transmission in place. So you want to put the e-brake on so that this doesn't turn as you're pulling it. Let's see if I can crack this one loose. Jesus Christ. Alright, let's try again. Oh, there it is. Alright, so that's 2. I've got 2 more to go, and we should be able to take down the drive shaft. Okay, I was able to undo the bolts, and now let's see. Just set this down somewhere out of the way, and our next operation is going to be to try to remove the brake cables, the e-brake cables, from the handle up there. Alright, so I'm going to go up there and see if I can undo that. This here is the e-brake bracket. So it's under the car in the transmission tunnel somewhere. And to remove it, the way I'm going to remove it is I'm going to go ahead and push. First of all, you have to disengage the parking brake. Okay, so it has to be completely disengaged. And then you're going to want to push on the wire, hold this wire and push it that way. And then with your other hand, grab this bracket and pull it on the opposite direction, this way. Alright, so if you see, there's a, I don't know if you can see that, there's a little gap. And you're going to slide the wire through that gap, and then you'll be able to remove it. See what I mean? So you push this wire that way and pull the bracket, and then as you do that, you just like slide the wire out through that gap, and you do that for both sides, and that's the first step. Alright, so now that you've done that, you're gonna slide the wire back, and then there's this little bracket here, and you're just gonna slide that wire outwards. Like I said, I believe in 93 the setup is different, so it might not look exactly as the same as this, but every other car before 93, from 79 and on all the way up to 93, it looks like this here, except for 93. Alright, so there's that. Okay, so now you come a little bit further down, and then you see this little clip. Clean the spider webs of that. So the way that you're gonna do that is probably with some pliers. You're gonna squeeze the clip and push it through. Alright, so I found a pretty easy way of doing this. If you're doing it, you can use a 13-inch wrench, 13 millimeter wrench, or also a 1/2 inch, which is close enough. You're gonna push the close end of it through the end that you just pulled off from that side. So this end, you're gonna stick the wrench through here, the close end, and you're gonna slide it all the way to where that clip that I showed you was on the bottom of the car. And once that's in, you're just gonna push this end in, and that's gonna close all the little teeth on the clip, right? And once that's pushed in, you just pull it from the other side, and it comes right off like that. Alright, just a little tip. So with the wire just kind of hanging out, all that's left to do is to remove that 10 millimeter bolt holding the bracket. That's the last thing holding the e-brake cable to the body itself. I'll tighten it there. Yeah, there we go. And there we go, guys. Pretty much the e-brake cable is loose. And the reason I'm just going to remove them all the way is because they're not going to work with my disc brake setup. I should actually put this back where the bracket went. So we got the e-brake cable out on both sides. And after that, I'm gonna go ahead and remove that brake line that I pointed out to you guys back here. Alright, so I'm gonna disconnect it from the hard line, and then I'll remove the bracket as well, because I won't be using that setup anymore. Okay, so far we got the drive shaft out and the e-brake cable, and now we're gonna go ahead and remove that brake line there. There we go. I actually think it's turning. Alright, so it seems to be working well. Let me grab a container so that I could catch the brake fluid. Alright, so we're just gonna do this, the rest of this by hand, and hopefully all the brake fluid gets caught on this drip pen here. Alright. Okay, let me get a wrench to remove the little bracket here, and we're almost ready to start working on the control arms. Alright, so far so good. Let's see. Get this out of there. And I'm not even getting any type of brake fluid coming out of there, so not a good sign. But in this case, that's great. Less mess. I wonder why this is completely dry. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, now that we have the e-brake cables, the brake lines disconnected, and the drive shaft out of the way, the next step is to remove the bottom bolt from the shock absorbers. And to do that, we need to put the differential back on the jack, because the shocks are the thing that's holding it in place right now. And once we do that, it's gonna hang even lower than what it is, and that's gonna allow us to remove the springs. That's good enough. And for that, you need a torch bit. So this is a 55 torch bit, and then you got two of these bolts, one on each side. I'm gonna go ahead and remove them. Okay, so I have the shock bolts disconnected now. The only thing holding the differential to the car now is the control arms. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to go ahead and remove the bolt that's attached to the body on each of the control arms, and that's going to allow me to pull the rest of the differential out. Okay, so I've removed the top upper control arm bolts, the ones that hold the control arm to the chassis. And technically the only thing holding the differential to the car now is the lower control arms. So when I bring down this jack, that should release the rear springs as well, because it should swing low enough. Yeah, there we go. Okay, that's exactly what I wanted. And let me see. you can see the spring here, it's basically loose. Alright, so let me see if I can just sort of wiggle it out. There's one. And there's the control arm there. So after I remove the next spring on the other side, all I have to do is take off the bolt on the lower control arm holding it to the chassis here, and that should free up the entire differential and we'll be able to pull it off of the car. Okay, so as I told you guys, I was able to remove the upper and lower control arm bolts that hook up the differential to the actual car itself, and this differential is basically loose now. Okay, so you can see it's ready to be pulled out. Okay, what I'm gonna do now is jack up the car a little bit more, because that's not gonna allow me to pull that out, and then we're gonna bring our new or used 8.8 and install it. Alright, here we go. Okay, so okay, so I successfully removed the entire differential. Tomorrow I'm gonna clean up all the spider webs. I got the old differential sitting here on the driveway. I'm gonna load it onto my truck and then bring the 8.8 down so that I can start installing it tomorrow morning. Alright guys, see you in the morning. Okay, so it's the next day for me, and I'm working on the 4-lug swap. I mean, the 5-lug swap again. I wanted to show you guys a few things. These here are the control arms that I'm going to be using. A set of used BBK grips that I found a while back. I don't even remember how much I paid for them, but this is the perfect opportunity to use them. Down here, already placed near its location, is the 8.8 that I'm going to be using. I believe this is off of either a 94 or 95 Sn95. As you can see, it comes with the brake lines, and then also the disc brakes and all that stuff. I'm gonna have to find a way to get the brake line from the passenger side down to the middle where the V8 models have it. So I don't know if I'm gonna have to replace the whole brake line. Keep in mind, these parts are used. The axles don't even match. So I paid $150 for this differential. Okay, the cover itself is worth about $80 new. That means I don't know why they sold it to me so cheap. There might be something wrong with it, but like I said, for now I'm gonna just place it, and so that I can roll the car. I'm gonna eventually remove it, clean it up, paint it. I have to do the gears, and also I'm gonna replace the carrier and the axles. These axles don't match. So yeah, one more thing I want to show you guys. Big reveal. These are the wheels that I'm going to be temporarily using to roll the car. These are Weld Pro Stars. The front ones are 15 by 4, 4.5 I believe, and the back are 15 by 10. To be honest, I'm not sure if they're going to fit, because the back ones are so wide it might be a problem. Also, the offset is for a Dodge, so that might be another problem there. Like I said, this is just temporary so that I can roll the car back and forth and do the rest of the stuff that I need to do to get the five lug working. So let's get started. I'm gonna start by installing the control arms on the body itself and just hand tighten them like everything else is gonna be for now. Alright, so what I'm gonna have to do next is I'm gonna go ahead and install the control arms. I'm gonna put in all the bolts that go straight to the body first. Like I said, in my case, since I'm going to be removing these things shortly after, like the differential, to rebuild it and regear it, I'm just gonna lightly tighten these things. If your stuff is ready to go, if you already have the tubing for the brakes done, make sure you tighten each bolt as you go. Now it's just a matter of finding this hole. And the easiest way is to feel it on one side with your finger and then push the bolt through. And there we go. So I'm just going to put the nut on it and lightly tighten it. And then I'm going to do the other side as well. Alright, so now I have all of the control arms bolted onto the body, the lowers and the uppers. You see them hanging over there. I had a little bit of struggle installing this one. The bolt didn't want to go in, but it finally did. Now that they're on, I'm going to go ahead and bolt up the differential back onto the control arms. And the way that I go about that is I start with the lower ones. Since they're hanging so low, I'm going to lift the differential just a little bit where this bushing could go in where it's supposed to fit. And once I have it in place, I'll stick a bolt through it on both sides. Once the bolt is through, you can jack up the differential and it pivots and it lands close to where the upper ones are supposed to go. Then you just install the upper ones and basically it's in place. You also have to put the spring on. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and do that and cut you guys back in. Alright, so like I told you guys, basically I have the rear end connected to the lower control arms on both sides. Okay, and the jack is holding it right now. What I'm gonna have to do next is I'm gonna jack up the differential, and that should make it so the differential is basically close to where it's supposed to end up on the upper controllers. You can see it moving in that direction already. Okay, so basically just have to move it around a little bit and then put a bolt through that, and it should be basically bolted onto the car. Alright, so the car is now sitting on the 8.8 5-lug differential, and I got the wheels on it, and it looks really good, doesn't it? Does it? Well, anyway, like I suspected, I will not be able to use these wheels because there's a huge problem. I'm sure you can already see it. Hold my drink. There's about 4 inches of extra back spacing here. So Dodge wheels will not fit on a Foxbody. At least the offset won't be right. Alright, so in order to use these wheels, I would have to do a lot of modifications to the differential, and I'm not sure that I want to go that far. But let's not lose focus on what the purpose of this video was, which was to install the 8.8 on the car. Alright, so that's on. Basically all the bolts are just hand tight. I didn't even bother bolting on those shocks because they're completely shot and I need to get replacements for it. They're not doing anything right now. Yeah, so this is the easy part, bolting on the differential. In a coming video I'm gonna go ahead and deal with the situation there with that brake line, hooking it up to the hard lines that are on the 8.8 right now. It's a completely different setup, so I don't know if I'm gonna have to order the correct line, or if I'll be able to bend that one, but I doubt it. It seems like it's too short. Anyway guys, so I know this video wasn't as detailed as usual, but there's nothing necessarily hard about bolting on a differential. The hard part comes getting the brakes to work afterwards, so I'm still gonna have to remove it, clean it up, re-gear it, do the brakes, all that stuff. Okay, so you know that's coming up in a future episode. What I'm gonna do now is something similar here in the front. I'm gonna go ahead and bolt up the brake setup that we cleaned up for the front. I'm gonna remove the front setup and convert it to the 5-lug, and temporarily, same way, place everything so that I can work on getting the hard lines and all the rest of the stuff, the master cylinder and the booster that I'm gonna use. Alright, so I'm gonna do that in the next video. Thank you guys for watching. Like I said, please consider subscribing if you're interested in seeing more videos. Take care guys.